Welcome back. You're still watching SA Today. Let's catch you up once again with one of our top stories today. The Reserve Bank had been briefing the media on the VBS Mutual Bank, and we're now joined by our reporter Diabo Seto, who's there. Diabo, 97% of the depositors, great news for them, but what's not clear is the future of the bank itself and some of the corporate clients.
Absolutely, Peter. Well, you could say that Nedbank has come to the great rescue of this 97% who are due to receive their funds through this bank that has extensive networks and branches across the areas where VBS, you would naturally find VBS along the Limpopo areas. Mike Brown, the CEO of Nedbank, actually mentioned about how they have a couple of branches there and about 16 ATMs. So they're quite a big brand or a big bank that is operating there. But of course, the future of VBS, it's still uncertain at this point, simply because we're still waiting for the investigation to conclude, which the Reserve Bank Governor has said that it should be concluded by around August, September this year, where this is where we will know the extent of the fraud that has taken place, because this is one of the biggest things that came out of this briefing, the issue and the extent of the fraud that has taken place at VBS. Also, the fact that the municipalities were never supposed to have deposited their funds with VBS, as it is a mutual bank and is also in contravention with the Municipal Act, but they continue to do so, thereby placing at risk a whole lot of money. So now they have to recover at least 1.5 billion rands. But what is comforting is that this has not shaken the entirety of the banking sector in South Africa that has assets of around 12 trillion rands. This is, of course, as just a small amount, but it is also concerning that you have this level of fraud happening within the South African banking system, also known across the world as one of the most stable of banking systems or financial systems in the world. I have asked Mr. Kuben Naidoo, who's the governor, the deputy governor here at the Reserve Bank, to join me just to give us a summary of what they have found and where to now for the workers of VBS, where to now for the curator, what they need to look at, and of course the impact of the damage that has been done to the banking sector just through this one mutual bank. Mr. Naidoo, thank you very much for your time.
Good afternoon.
It has been it just gives us a bleak picture of the extent of fraud that we see. That's just one bank taking place. We know that over the past 30 years, we've had at least 20 banks that have closed down. Not all of them necessarily through fraud, but maybe liquidity issues. This must be a concern also for you as a Reserve Bank.
Let me start off by saying the good news today is that we can repay the depositors. So 97% of depositors will get all their money back in a few days. But yes, it is worrying. South Africa has a very sound banking system. We've seen many bank failures, but they've generally been small banks. We've not had a major systemic problem with a large bank. In other words, the system of banking in South Africa hasn't been shaken. When globally there were major problems during the financial crisis, large banks got into trouble. Almost every bank in the UK required a bailout from government. Yeah. We didn't have that here. Our banks were largely unscathed. So yes, we have had problems with small banks, but we have not had a problem with the system of banking in South Africa.
Let's talk about when this all started. I remember that in March, the Reserve Bank was largely accused of not supporting a black bank. It was accused of, they basically said that there's more that you could have done to save this bank. Do you feel that this evidence of fraud and criminality vindicates the bank, that there was really it was not an issue of race?
I think yes. I think now that the public has seen what's happened in this bank, I think they understand why we put it under curatorship. They understand why we've acted. I also think they've understand why we've taken so long to pay back retail depositors. We've never seen anything like this in a long time. The extent of fraud, the extent of losses is quite unequaled in a small bank.
Let's talk about the issue of the investigation that the curator is taking along. Yesterday we saw headlines, that were quite disturbing, and we all walked in the air thinking that we will hear that this is the end of VBS. Take us through the journey of the curator and what they have to go through. I know that you said it's around 2 or 3 million rands that they have to spend monthly on making sure that they stabilize what is left of VBS.
Sure. So the job of the curator is to go in and effectively take over the executive management, replace or serve the function of the board and executive management. That requires significant technical expertise, accounting expertise, IT expertise, in some cases actuarial expertise, contracting expertise, legal expertise. So all of that the curators had to take over in the bank. The curators had to spend a considerable amount of money restating the financial accounts, unpacking what is fact and what is fiction in the previous financial accounts, getting on top of the data issues, and of course serving customers, making sure that people can get some access to depositors, that depositors are able to receive some money, and that we can continue to collect on loans. That's been the work of the curator.
Let's talk about the restating of the financial statements. You're going back all the way to 2017. Typically, what is the process that takes place right after the financial statements are restated? What happens then?
Sure. The restated financial statements in the first instance will tell us whether the bank is solvent or insolvent. If the bank is insolvent, we may have to consider liquidating the bank. If the bank is solvent, then there's probably a chance that you can save the bank. So until those financial statements are restated, we can't state definitively what the future of the bank is and whether it's possible to save the bank or not. At this stage, we're still working on the assumption that it will be possible to save the bank. But that's why those restated financial statements are important.
One of the other important things that happened during the beginning of this was that we had a lot of stokvels and burial societies who were quite, how can I put it, who were disadvantaged in terms of getting back their money. They couldn't bury their loved ones. What have you done with those burial societies? Are they part of the 97%?
Yes. So for the last 4 months, many depositors have suffered significant hardship. They've not been able to access their money. Stokvels, burial societies, individuals have not been able to access their money, or have only been able to access 1,000 rand a day, or in burial societies slightly more. We are confident that, well, from Friday, people will have access to all their money up to 100,000 rand. So if there's somebody with 100,000 in their account, they can go and they can take all of it out on one day if they want. We hope they don't do that. We hope that they keep their money in a bank or transfer it to another bank, but they will have access to all of their money.
Surely this should send us a lesson to the board of directors sitting in other mutual banks as well as commercial banks about the fiduciary duties and that they should be performing.
Exactly. A bank looks after other people's money, and if you don't take that seriously, if you don't act as if it's other people's money and treat it in the same way as you treat your own money, then there's a problem. And
just quickly, 3 to-dos when you are starting a mutual bank. I know that there are a lot of people who are looking at starting small cooperative banks, small mutual banks, and they may not necessarily be familiar with the rules of what not to do.
Sure. The first 3 things I would say is get good people who are honest and competent. Make sure you've got enough money because it's a costly process. And make sure that you've got good systems. And what I mean by systems is not just IT systems, but systems to make sure that the bank is run well, that deposits are collected, that people's amounts are recorded, that loans can be collected or repaid.
Thank you, Mr. Naidoo. Thank you very much for your time. That was Mr. Kuben Naidoo. He is the Deputy Governor here at the Reserve Bank, just giving us a summary of what we heard today here about Nedbank taking over the deposits of VBS. And he says there's still a chance that this bank could be saved, but he gave us his top 3 tips of what not to do if you're considering starting a mutual banks with the community. We know that there's a big opportunity and space for a mutual bank to be started, especially within the rural areas, because they serve that community a whole lot. So he has given us his top 3 tips, one of them being, know what you're doing and make sure that you get people who know what they're doing, make sure that you have enough money. And with that, I'll hand over back to the studio.
Diabo, thank you very much indeed. That was our reporter, Diabo Seto, who's live at the Reserve Bank, reporting that story, of course. And the headlines are: fraud has been committed at VBS Bank, 1.5 billion rand needs to be recovered, and 97% of depositors will get their money back.